What up, guys and girls? It's Bobby.
And Sean.
And for those who cannot see us, we are actually recording live.
Yeah, Bobby's still in the tri-state area. I'm in Colorado, but through the technology that has been provided to us by our schools as well as our own endeavors, we found that Zoom is a fantastic website for us to have face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, great platform. I've actually never messed with it before. I was actually planning on doing this over FaceTime, but I didn't realize FaceTime is just more a pain in the ass because with FaceTime you have to record your screen, whereas Zoom has a native record function, so it's a lot more convenient for us to do this via Zoom. So, shout out to Zoom. Buy their stock if you haven't already. I actually saw their stock yesterday. The other day, I looked it up. It was up 8% or something from last week. So, hot stock pick, Zoom company.
Yeah, and if you can't tell from watching it either, one of us has a professional setup, a.k.a. Dr. Bobby, with a mic stand, and I'm using my very powerful hands to.
Yeah, although Sean has a
much
better backdrop for his shot. Mine is of the kitchen, so you can see the kitchen behind me. Nothing interesting, just a bunch of shit.
I have curtains, but I don't know if the sun's going to brighten up. But behind me, nah, you can't. I've got Logic Peak open space out here in the Springs.
Oh, Brian just texted me. He said he just got back from Denver.
That asshole.
Well, we can get him on later. But anyways, I don't know. So what do you want to talk about, Sean? I think we could talk about some coronavirus updates and how our quarantine's going.
I mean, it's fucking nuts. They just announced that Northern Virginia is on lockdown until June
1st for Virginia,
10th or something. Yeah, because
Virginia
some idiots were down at Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
I imagine that's going to be on par probably with the way New York City is going, especially since cases just considerably increase every single day. I mean, it's pretty scary how bad it's going to get. Initial reports, I think, were 100,000 deaths, and now I think President Trump came out and said something about that number potentially being up to 200,000. So
yeah.
I don't think we're through the worst of it quite yet.
No, absolutely. I think the projections that I was reading is that the peak isn't going to be until May or June or this summer, and that didn't Trump announce the social distancing until April 30th yesterday?
Yeah, I think he
right.
extended it through April 30th.
Yeah.
They wanted to get the economy up and going. I mean, I think the stimulus checks are supposed to come within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And that'll be $1,200 if I think you make less than 75,000 as an individual, or 150,000, or maybe it's maybe less than 100,000 as an individual, less than 150,000 as a combined couple.
Yeah, I think 1,200 goes up to 70,000, and then from 70,000 to 99,000, it drops off every 1,000, drops off 100 or something like that. But Christina,
Rogue is going to be selling personal gym stuff hard once that money starts hitting bank accounts.
Dude, I was actually looking on Rogue's website last night. Their shipping delay is 2 to 3 weeks right now because of they're getting crushed with online orders and shipping. So I guess we'll have to see how this turns out. I mean, that stimulus check is going to be much needed for me, not really because I'm struggling to live, but because of a lot of other stuff going on in my life. I'm actually closing the house on Thursday. We're going to be closing on Thursday.
That's so exciting. I'm actually covering transfers of property and land in my online classes right now, Zoom University Law School. And so that whole process of going through the deed and, the mortgage process, it's really interesting. When I bought next door here, I didn't have any idea whatsoever what I was doing. I think this class has been super helpful, going forward now.
Yeah.
So if you got any questions, you let me know. I can't give you 100% answers, but I'll be your lawyer.
Yeah. I mean, it's been very interesting buying this whole house buying process. It's the first time I've ever bought a house myself. So it's been very interesting to see the process. also kind of interesting, kind of learning about the intricacies involved with buying a house. Like for example, I'm using the VA loan to fund my house. So we actually put out, or so we offered, so the house that we are under contract for, their closing on Thursday. Like the listing price was like 385. We ended up offering 420 on it, and then
God damn.
with the VA loan, after you're under contract, the VA will then appraise the house to make sure the VA isn't getting hosed on like an overpriced house. And the house actually got appraised for 385. So that means that the VA is only going to pay for $385,000 for the house. So we went back to the seller and told the seller that it appraised low. So the seller, I think maybe might be in the military or something, but the seller was like moving soon, so they wanted to close the house as soon as possible. So the seller actually ended up knocking down the 420,000 that we were under contract for, knocking it down to 400. So we actually ended up saving, I guess, $20,000 overall. But I actually had to put a loan, get a loan, personal loan on my truck, with my truck as collateral, to get that cash to close. Because now we need like $23,000 to close.
Yeah, that's one of those things when you negotiate too with the sales contract, you can throw in like contingency clauses where if the house doesn't appraise for what you've submitted as an offer, then like you're willing to pay up to however many thousand in order to cover that with cash. But I think one of the big things that the VA loan is great. I used it. I think it's an awesome thing for individuals in the military and veterans to buy their first homes without having to amass a small fortune for that 10 to 20% down for conventional. But that is the risk that you run, is if the house does not appraise. And so if you're in a seller's market like it is now, where home prices are going up exponentially, a lot of times they're not going to appraise for that value. And so you also find that as a seller, a lot of times the individuals that make offers on your home, you will be privy to what kind of loans they've applied for. And so unfortunately, sometimes people can be like, I don't want to sell to a VA loan because if the price goes up, then like I could be at risk of not being able to close on this house.
So I actually have a legal question for you, because I was thinking about this process from the VA loan. Because like, is there anything stopping you legally from like offering something like some outrageous amount to make sure that you're like the top offer that gets accepted, fully knowing that that the offer they put in isn't really the real offer because you're going to anticipate like the appraisal coming in low?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that legally questionable or illegal? Because I was going to...
It would, because
like
at the end of the
faith?
day, no, it's an example of bad faith. And then not only is it that, when you go through the process of trying to identify things like through a standard inspection, the only thing that you can use to break your contract have to be like latent defects or be involved with like something that would materially alter the value of your home, which doesn't account for like small nicks in the floor or faded paint. It has to be something like massive. For instance, out in Colorado, if you don't have a radon inspection or mitigation kit in your basement like I had next door, if the potential buyers were to come in, go under contract and say, hey, we want this, and I don't provide it to them, then they can rescind their offer. But if you come in super high, you can't really breach unless there's only a couple instances, and those usually revolve around the seller's breach for you to rescind an offer. So like active concealment, a lot of states have gone to this idea of misfeasance versus nonfeasance. So do you have to disclose information about your house that is an issue, or if you can just sit there and say nothing and know that the buyer has to do that and find it, and if he doesn't find it, then he's on the bill for it. So yeah, if you come in with a super high offer, especially knowing that your appraisal value is not going to be there, purely for the intent of locking out all their offers, like that's bad faith, and you could be liable for damages, which would probably be anywhere from like holding a check for like that equity that you have to submit, which a lot of times is around like $4,000 to $6,000 for just a standard VA, I think. Right, or if you put a down payment, you could potentially do that. And then the other problem is, to continue this slippery slope of being in bad faith, A lot of states have brokerages fees that the seller has to pay. So it's typically like 3% to the broker's agent, the broker for the seller and the buyer, so 6% total. You don't have to sell the house a lot of times to be responsible for those payments. So the broker only has to provide you someone who is in good faith attempting to purchase. If the contract falls through for whatever reason, you could still be required to pay those fees. So that's just another example as to why, as a buyer, you should be weary of submitting like a super high bid just to lock it in, knowing you're going to try to chop the value down through either the loan process, the appraisal process, or the inspections.
So, is there any way that that someone could prove that you're doing that out of bad faith? Because, you know, in my situation, it ended up working in our favor for that. But, I don't know if we didn't intend to try and shortchange it based on the approval or the appraisal. So I think it ended up working out in our favor that it ended up knocking the price down for something that so we saved money. So I wonder, is there any way that they could prove they did in bad faith?
I mean, that would have to be one of those almost like a reasonable person standard.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I think the jurisdictions will have different criteria that they'll evaluate every single one of those situations on. But in general, if you're reliant on that mortgage loan as the good faith purchaser and it doesn't come in at the value that you submitted for the contract or going under contract, that's one of those things that typically. Well, I'll back up. If you've already secured a loan up to say $400,000, and the max that you could have received is a $400,000 appraisal that you would be relying on, at that point, you might be able to break in and get out of that contract if that is a precedent for going forth and finalizing the sale of the house. However, if you were able to secure the loan well before and going ahead, and you knew that your upper limit was only for $400K, and you submitted something for $550.
Oh, I see. Right.
I think that would be a pretty clear indicator that you were not operating in good faith.
Yeah, we got pre-approved for a mortgage for $450 and offered $420 on a listing price of $385, and we actually had a clause too. If it appraised low, we'd cover up to $5,000 in cash, but they ended up appraising $35,000 low. So that was just my thought process. What is stopping me from future houses and offering not significantly more, but probably 10% more than market value, and then getting the top offer and then getting it knocked down with the appraisal.
So did you guys do a title search at all on the property?
No, we didn't. But it was it was based on the Redfin estimates. We use that as kind of the the goal, and based on what our realtor told us and what be competitive offers. We kind of took his advice into account and just pretty much offered what he thought was appropriate.
So what I would recommend, because that outside of the appraisal, what the title is essentially confirming that this tract of land or the actual physical real property of the house is not encumbered by other liens, mortgages, things that would be on record. For instance, the concept of adverse possession. A lot of states have very strict statutes of limitation now, Colorado, it's 17 years. But if, for instance, someone was living on your backyard or your 50 acres that you might want to buy, if someone was living within 2 or 3 acres for say 17 years, and you had not done a title search, and maybe they had gone and recorded that they now own that property. When you purchase that property, now you are at risk of losing less of the value of what you essentially paid for. So I would recommend to anyone out there that is looking to buy a home, do a title search to make sure that you have marketable title, to make sure that it's unencumbered from any liens, and then also look at zoning restrictions and requirements, because so long as that property is not in current violation, you might be walking into a situation and you want to build on, and there might be easements, but again, you have no idea what the local ordinances are that are going to maybe restrict your ability to really enjoy that property. So food for thought, get a title search if you're going to subject yourself to a 30-year loan.
Interesting. More things that I'm learning about buying a house that I had no idea about. This entire house buying process has been very illuminating to me because it's like such a black box until you actually go through it. So it's very interesting seeing like all the different parties getting involved in the process and like all the random people. I was like, like who are these people that are asking me for like documentation or like this is very interesting.
Oh, it's nuts. And like you think it's stressful as a buyer, it's like, it's almost as stressful as a seller too, because you essentially sell your home three times. It's like when you first put it up on to market and you're receiving bids, and you go under contract. And then the second time is when the inspection is coming back. And again, they're looking for like those latent defects, something that would substantially reduce the value of the property. And then the third time is once the appraisal comes back, if your loan is contingent on the proper value. So it's super stressful. And as a buyer, if you're waiting on the VA approval, like it could be a very long 30 to 45 days if you're doing a relatively short close.
Yeah, yeah. Luckily, like the people that I am working with, so like my realtor and my lender are all like pretty much on top of it. Like I haven't had to like follow up too much. They've kept me like on time with doing everything and making sure I have everything done. So that was also like really cool for me, or like really beneficial to me, is fun, especially like the local lender too. Like we talked about this in one a couple weeks ago, I think, about finding a local lender versus like USAA or like Navy Federal and those large national level lenders. Because they were able, like my local lender, we had like a 4 month or 4 week from contract to close. And then like talking to USAA, like they need at least 2 months to close a mortgage. So like just being able to work with a local lender was definitely a huge benefit in getting us to close on time.
Yeah, I think if people have the opportunity, and the privilege that they want to purchase a home, a lot of the military, we've got USAA. I've got a couple friends that have gone through it. I think we talked about it at some point a couple weeks ago, going through the loan process. USAA is a bank, whatever. But if you can go through like a local thing, I think that's preferable, because I'll tell you my experiences with the realtor that I used, as well as the local bank, title and mortgage companies. Like they contacted me multiple times prior to the sale, after the sale, like, the Thanksgiving after I bought the house. They were like, hey, come over to the office. We want to give you like a pumpkin pie. And then like a couple months ago, I got a call from my realtor not that I used to sell, but I used to buy, to say like, hey, Sean, how you doing? Checking up on you. I mean, TJ was like a phenomenal dude, super personable. But it's like, you'll find that like the local talent in these areas will be much more established than like maybe some like agent that's sitting down in Houston, Texas, that's taking your call when you're trying to purchase up in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah. So that's one of my pro tips for anybody else trying to look at buying houses. And like we talked about, just find local people to work with. It makes it way easier.
Speaking of houses and the fact that we're all being quarantined right now and sheltered in place, for those of you that are watching the YouTube stream of this, you'll probably notice that one of us looks like Tom Selleck with like a full bushy mustache. The other one looks like Sam Elliott, again, full bushy mustaches. And I, of course, am referring to both Bobby and I, because we've got phenomenal facial hair going on. I don't know if you can tell. My nose broom is just coming in. Oh, how dare you! This is like because I have like very blonde,
that
strawberry
literally looks
blonde.
like a Hitler stash.
No, you can see it out here. See?
Yeah, if you didn't,
it's the light. The light's got to catch it.
Yeah, I'd say like it's way like more concentrated underneath the nose for you. Like if you're just looking, it looks almost like a Hitler stash, but it's like not quite.
Dude,
dark
I've
enough.
got such a large, massive power nose. If my nose was the average size of just a normal peasant, of a mortal, you might say, then maybe, just maybe, this mustache would look more full. But because I've been blessed by the gods, I've got a power snatch.
Very Roman nose.
Very Roman. Yeah, very like Northern European, like Isles. But yeah, we're growing mustaches now, so get on board.
Yeah, so like I have not cut my hair or shaved since the beginning of the month when we went on quarantine. Since March 1st. So this is 1 month of not cutting my hair or shaving. My hair is getting stupid long. I'm like almost able to put it in like a top knot, like a man bun top knot.
That's hot.
It's I'm
We,
actually
we
debating on keeping this as long as possible because I'm gonna PCS to Washington in May, so I'm gonna need to get a new driver's license. So I figure I might as well keep all this, get a new driver's
ID
license.
card.
Yeah. And then, because I'm also gonna get a new CAC when I in process, so obviously I have to be like 670-1, so I'm gonna cut my hair. But 670-1 does let you have mustaches, so I'm gonna have a really
It
bushy
does.
mustache for my CAC card for my new CAC as a active duty captain. It's gonna be dope.
Oh, I know you are so looking forward to going back, to service wearing the uniform. So I don't envy you in the slightest.
I am not looking forward to the day that I have to put back a uniform on. That I will say that like I was actually talking to somebody like a West Point classmate a couple like last week talking about like med school and like different routes for med school. And I was like I fucking loved having this 4 year break from the army. Like it's been like an awesome like reset and like break from for lack of a better word, the bullshit that you deal with in the army on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's been great. So I'm not looking forward to coming back in the army, putting on a uniform, and dealing with the shit again.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm looking forward to hearing the stories of like you having to go to formation PT and you're going to spend 30 minutes, stretching and 15 minutes doing like calisthenics, and then you'll break and go to the hospital and get something to eat. Which, by the way, the hospital DFACs are like a million times better than every other DFAC that you get like around, the brigades.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I'm like 99.9% sure that we don't do organized PT during residency. When you're like a actual doctor, like once you graduate residency, that might be a different story. But I'm like 99.9% sure we don't do PT, and yeah, during residency at least.
Oof. Can you imagine? Oh, I know what you're excited about though. How about the new? Are they called the pinks and greens?
Pinks and greens, yeah, the new ones.
Yeah, the new throwback World War II. Replacing the ASUs. Those look really good.
Yeah, but like, why the fuck do I need to buy more uniforms? Like, just last year, I had to finally buy the new OCPs and the new PTs because I was going this past summer. I went on my away rotations to the active like to hospitals, and of course you have to actually have the uniforms now. So like I had to spend like $600 on uniforms, and I only have one set of PTs and one set of OCPs to buy.
Didn't you say you had to show up in your class Bs or something?
Yeah, so June 1st is gonna be my report. Well, it's tentatively my report date until I get my fucking orders, which is a whole nother story about waiting for orders right now with what's going on with COVID. So June 1st is supposed to be my report date, and then we're supposed to report in Class Bs. So that'll be another hilarious experience.
Dude, like you're pretty jacked. So like class Bs, look good. I got some of my other buddies that when I was in aid at 3ID, they were their class Bs when we went to check them out over at 2nd Brigade before they went heavy, and the couple of them that are like big and jacked and burly and like tatted out, it's like I think that's a really good looking uniform. Like if they wanted to switch to that in the summer, I would be all for it because like it's one of those uniforms if you are fit, like it is a good looking, almost tailored to your body type, uniform you can throw on.
Yeah, mine is not very tailored. I think the shirt that I have, I like swimming, like the short sleeve ASU shirt. Like I like swimming it. It's fucking huge on me. But just the fact that I'll have like visible tattoos and like an almost full sleeve, I think will and a very bushy mustache by then will be my differentiating factor from my peers.
I've got an internship with the SDNY this summer, so I'm trying to grow mine out so that like I can fit in with that like potential New York style, like I'm a cop. Was that's Boston? That was a Boston accent. I don't know what accent. I don't know, man. But like the other guys, like me and Marky Mark and Will Ferrell are gonna go bust international crime syndicate. And I'll just be back there, like, looking up laws for them and shit. But I'll have a sweet mustache.
Yeah. So like but yeah. I'll say I can't wait to move to Washington because I can't wait to move into this new house and actually have like to get my life going. Because like I don't know about you, but I feel like just in limbo right now. I think that's like my biggest thing is that I just don't. There's like so much uncertainty with what's going on with school and moving and PCSing and all this other stuff. Like that's my biggest thing is like I don't really know what's going to happen or what's going on.
It's the same here with the. I just mentioned that internship. I've got buddies that have been told that like their internships might not even happen, um, because whether you're getting an MBA, if you're at like a school in New York, or you're like in your second year of law school going for internships, like a lot of times that summer gig can pay anywhere from 15 to 40K, and so it's like it's cost prohibitive at that point to bring in interns, or they have to fire attorneys or actual bankers because it's cheaper for this intern to work and
Right.
Be given the exact same tasks. So I mean, it's scary. I don't know what like the non-paying internships are going to do, but like I have no idea. And with the pass-fail system, like schools are just coming out left and right with changing up everyone's trajectory for what this last 3 months was supposed to
Oh
be.
yeah, it's kind of crazy even for like med school. It's like way crazier for like the third years, because like for those that don't know, just to give some context, like the third year med students, that summer between third and fourth year or the beginning of fourth year is extremely important for the third year med students because that summer is when they take their second set of boards. So the step two, CK and CS, we take two boards that beginning of the fourth year. And then the beginning of fourth year is also when you do all your away rotations too. So like going to the hospitals or places that you're interested in actually applying and interning at. So that's when you'll go to these hospitals too. So like for all the third years right now, like there's so much uncertainty right now because like all the testing centers are closed down, so they can't get their boards done. You can't travel to the way rotations, so you can't really get letters of recommendation from like really like the letters of recommendations you need to build a strong packet. You aren't even going to be in the hospital right now. Like nobody's in the hospital right now too. So like you're missing out on actual like learning that you need to learn for like boards and stuff. So I really empathize a lot with like the third years because they're kind of fucked, for lack of a better word. Whereas for me in the fourth year, like it's just kind of annoying because it's not really like doesn't really impact me so much. Like I'm supposed to go on an emergency medicine rotation next month, so like I don't care. Like what like EM doesn't really teach like I'm not doing EM, so it doesn't really matter to me. Like I understand kind of what emergency medicine looks like, so it's like it doesn't really impact me so much by not being able to go into do my rotation. It's more so like honestly like I'm not really impacted by this. Like it doesn't. I know that like I'll be fine at the end of it. Like I already matched to residency. I already know where I'm going. It's just a matter of time before it shakes itself out. But like for the third years, like this has like huge implications for the rest of their lives. With their like how they match for residency. How successful they are getting the residencies and like where they're gonna go. So it's like I feel for the third years because that's way more stressful than what I'm dealing with.
Oh, it's not. I mean, I feel the same way for law school's 3 years. The students that are finishing up their second year going into what should be an internship that leads to a job offer at the end of the summer, like that's at risk now.
Yeah.
And then every summer we have on-campus interviews for I think most law schools, but really important for like tier one programs, to try to get a lot of these like business law type jobs that are paying like very top end dollar. And so on-campus interviews were incredibly important. And so now they've pushed those to the winter. We're moving to pass fail this semester so that it doesn't impact like that GPA. And then your first semester of your second year will, be indicative of whether or not you really know what law school is testing or you're just, continuing at whatever, proficiency level that you exhibited as a 1L and aren't improving.
Yeah. So
It's stressful.
yeah, it's like because it sounds like for your perspective, it's like becoming harder for you to differentiate yourself from your peers, much like it is in medicine, where it's like it's becoming very harder to differentiate yourself from your peers in order to go on to these like very selective internships for you, and then for residencies for us.
Oh,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And with law, I would kind of paint the picture like this. You'll go into a class, and in the 3 years that you're at law school, I mean, everyone knows that like contracts is a very basic form of law, And in your first year, you take a contract class, and it will be very comprehensive. And then your second and third, you can get into like more specifics, like how to draft contracts, or like contracts that deal specifically with like business, contracts that deal specifically with like administrative law, and you really kind of tailor that. But at the end of the day, like the guy that gets the C on the exam to the guy that gets the A, or the female too, the only difference is really maybe how quickly they can apply those concepts to like a different challenging set of examples or hypotheticals that get thrown at them. Because, you know, you're going to have an opportunity when you're presented with a real life contract problem to go through and reevaluate your notes, and, you know, almost like a math problem, like you're going to start breaking down the equation to ensure you get the right answer. So moving to a pass fail is going to be, I think, really difficult for those jobs that wanted to be able to differentiate like the person that gets it the quickest and that like knows it deep in their core without maybe having to do as much research, versus someone that just maybe they got it but they're not as good,
Right.
you know, as someone else.
Yeah.
So that will be a huge challenge for law firms in the hiring process in the next 6 months.
Yeah. I'm just like very curious just to see, you know, like the long-term implications of this long, you know, quarantine process and the whole pandemic. Because like, not only from an economic perspective, from like a social perspective, fitness standpoint, you know, you know, I think that I was talking to Christina a couple weeks ago, like when we started getting quarantined, I was like, this is probably going to be like a good wake up call for a lot of people in America about like obesity and fitness. Cause like I've never seen, cause my desk like sits in the window so I can see outside and see the street from from my desk. And I've never seen so many people running before in my life or walking around outside. Like, no, I've never like ever, like it'd be like one person a day I would see running, but I see like 5 people every hour running by now, just because there's nothing else to do with quarantine. So I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, hey, you know what? You know, and especially with like how COVID or SARS-CoV-2, like the virus seems to be, you know, killing more people. That looks like 80% of people that are dying from it are obese or have medical conditions related to obesity, like high blood pressure or, you know, like diabetes. Like those are the 3 biggest like comorbidities that predict, you know, more like killing you. Is that being, if you're overweight, if you have high blood pressure or diabetes, like the big 3 that are linked with, you know, being able to survive this. Which is kind of funny because if you think about it, like heart disease in America kills like 1,000 people a day, or like,
Yeah.
you know, but like it takes like one pandemic virus where people realize that your health is important to you. But it's just like, where was like this care, or like where was this dedication to fitness, you know, before the pandemic, when, you know, 1,000 people, or I don't know what the number is, but like it's like 150,000 people a year die from heart disease alone. Doesn't include like diabetes or anything else, just some heart disease. Like 150,000 people a year die in America a year. So it's kind of crazy.
Well, I think the difference with that is almost like a level of responsibility there. So the people didn't want to acknowledge the fact that obesity-related illnesses are so fatal to the general public, because it would have to be an admission of, oh, this is something that I could have controlled. And if you can control it, then by identifying what that X factor is, well, then are you also condemning those individuals that aren't making healthy choices? Where I think this one is more impactful to get people to be fit and to stay healthier and you know, eat cleaner, because they feel there's not as much controls that, you know, they have. This is like the pandemic might hit you, you might get, you know, sick, but it's going to be your fitness that you control that might, you know, be the determinant factor whether you live or you die. So it's like, it's less of a I have to take onus of my situation, and more, I can take precautionary steps to limit, you know, the impact of this disease. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, I don't really understand where you're coming from. It sounds like you're saying the same exact thing for both situations.
No, so like the first one, like people don't want to acknowledge like their personal shortcomings, or you know, acknowledging that they failed to keep themselves healthy. And so like that's one reason why people maybe like didn't want to work out, whereas this one they want to work out because like it's like this tangible disease that they can see.
Oh, I see what
Like
you're saying. It's like more of an immediate threat, whereas like heart disease, like you don't see the effects of like being fat until you're like 50 or 60 when you start having heart. Like, okay, I see what you're saying. Like
it's not like you go to a Cracker Barrel and you're sitting around going, holy shit, I'm going to catch heart disease from one of these people with the 55 stack pancakes.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, from my perspective, I think more people are just going to get more into fitness because, like, being under quarantine, I think people are gonna start doing fitness more, and then realize, or start eating better too, just taking care of their bodies better because there's nothing else to do with their time. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges or impediments to fitness or health, is that people think they don't have enough time to like put in the time to work out, to eat healthy, to not order out, not, you know what I mean? So I feel,
Well, how's your fitness been? Because you've been doing like a 10K a day on your
yeah,
ski
like
erg,
I'm
which
I'm in like great cardiovascular conditioning. But like that's what, just to go back real fast, like, but that's what I was talking about with like just people finding the time to like work out and eat healthy. I think that they'll see like, oh, I feel really good when I work out every day, or I feel really good when I run, and I feel really good when I eat like fruits and vegetables like I should be doing. So I think a lot of people are going to realize that these habits are sustainable, and that, you know, they feel good from, you know, doing these things, and they'll carry over like the habits they build during quarantine into normal life. So that's like kind of where I think people are going to do that. But then based on what
yeah.
you
What do
said,
you think?
go ahead.
What do you think the impact is going to be on boxes? I mean, because like I think a lot of CrossFit gyms aren't going to survive this
Yeah.
unless they're like huge. But I think people are going to realize maybe that the what do you think the average person, before we go into this, spends a year that goes to a CrossFit box? Like what that membership costs?
So I think it's about 100, depending on where you are. I think it's about 150 a month for, generally speaking, for CrossFit. It's usually what I tell people.
So I'm not going to. God damn it, you're going to make me do the math.
150 times 12 is
144.
12, 5, 6 is
180.
1800.
Yeah, so $1,800 a year to essentially, work out and hang out with friends. I know you can get almost all of the gear that you would need for $1,800 for a garage gym.
Oh yeah.
Like a basic barbell set. I went to when I got my gym stuff, I think I spent in total $2,100, but that included a rower. If I didn't get the rower, and I lived on a hill here in Colorado, so I really didn't need the cardio piece. I think that would have been like just over like $1,000
Right.
would have gotten me like 500 pounds
Yeah.
in weights, a bar, and a rack and a bench.
Yeah, like the bare essentials, like do strength and conditioning work at home. But I think, yeah, but that's good. That's a great point that you bring up, is like, you know, what are gyms in general going to do after this? Because I think like everybody's buying equipment. Like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast about how Rogue is sold out of everything. All the like fitness manufacturers are all sold out of everything because people are buying up all this shit to start their own garage gyms. So that's a good point. I wonder what is going to happen for CrossFit, like boxes or just gyms in general after this, because the ones that do survive like the pandemic, in terms of they don't go under with their bills, you know, there's a pretty good chance that some of those members that started at the pandemic aren't going to be there at the end of the pandemic, because they're going to have garage gyms, you know. So why would you pay the 150 a month it is for CrossFit gym when you can just work out at home and get the same effects? Well, but then you can talk about like the community aspect and like these
Yeah,
social
sure. And
interactions that, you know, that people depend, you know, this goes back like that I shouldn't be the one talking about this, but like for economics, like, you know, the value comes from CrossFit isn't necessarily, it doesn't extend to just fitness, but also like the social interactions and friendships. So like people compare, you know, I don't know. So but long story short, I do think that gyms or especially like small business gyms, will be facing a huge, you know, challenge to their livelihood, which I empathize with. Also another reason why
yeah, it's awful.
I haven't canceled my gym membership yet is because I actually feel, you know, emotionally, I would feel emotionally responsible if my gym went under and I canceled my membership. So
Yeah, I mean that would be the worst, because like a lot of these owners are super personable. They got into the business because they love seeing the fitness community and people improving themselves. And there's always something new that you can learn through a different set of movements, or people coming through and partnering up to provide not now just good fitness but nutrition with like local kitchens. I mean, so it's like a gigantic community. I think you're going to have like a good amount of people though that realize, okay, well, I can save on both commuting time and long-term costs by getting this, the gym essentials for a year. And then I don't know what, some of these CrossFit boxes charge. Like I think like Misfit Athletics, you can do their online programming
the remote programming.
for like 50 or $80 a month. So if like you wanted to invest in that instead of going to the gym, but you just miss out on like competing against your friends,
Yeah.
because that was one of the more fun parts of going to boxes. And I mean, like that's one of the reasons why, like even when I had like a garage gym and some gym equipment, I would prefer to go lift at like Audie Murphy at Benning, um, or at the CRTF at Hunter, because you were just surrounded by people getting after it and it was motivating.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I dislike about working out at home is that there's nobody else there to kind of push me. Not saying that like I derive the majority of my motivation from like other people like extrinsically. It's a lot of intrinsic motivation, but that's like the difference between like 95% effort and like 100% effort. That 5% is like the social interaction, those people around you that you don't get at home. So like I've been like working out a lot. I probably do like 2 hours a day of working out right now at home ish. So I'm like in really good shape, but it's not like enjoyable. You know what I mean? I've been like it's more of like a chore to me to like right now to like to work out because for me it's um like I want to work out, but it's like I know I have to do this in order to maintain my sanity in these times.
I mean, it's like almost like a check on reality. When I would run, I mean, for anyone that's followed the military prep programming, one of my favorite things to program is 400-meter intervals, and whether that's 400-meter intervals with like a 60-second rest, but on a 90-second interval, or running like a 6 to 6:30 mile per hour pace with like a 9-minute recovery pace. I think 400s are an incredible tool that builds your speed into longer distance running. But if I'm by myself doing it, like I remember a couple times I would hit like a 85 to an 86 on these 400s and be like, I know I can go faster. And then you go and I'd run them with like Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And with Dan, I'm like, okay, like I need to hit 80 flats because I know like at any time Dan's going to pick it up and try to blow me out of the water on one of these 400s. So I can't let him do that. I need to like, set this gap up for myself of a couple seconds. So without that, but like I think people too that have lifted long enough by themselves or done enough cardio by themselves, they get to the point where they know what that internal motivator is going to be. And when you find that workout for your person, it's almost like you're going to push yourself regardless of whether you got people around you, just because you got the maturity.
Yeah, I would say like I generally like for me like I do a little like Trauma Channel, I do like 10K a day of cardio. So usually that's 10K on the ski erg, but I'm kind of been toning that down a little bit because I started developing these like really weird like hip issues. Because I think I'm developing like overuse injuries because I'm skiing 10K a day, which is in my mind the equivalent of running 5 miles a day. So if you just put that into perspective, skiing 10K is like running 5 miles a day.
You're ready to be a field grade, bro.
Yeah, like my cardio conditioning is like insane right now. I'm actually kind of curious right now. Like I haven't taken my heart rate or done any of those biometric testing. So I am very interested to see like what my resting heart rate is going to be right now because I have a suspicion it's going to drop even more because I'm literally running 5 miles a day for the last 3 weeks I've run. So it's like, obviously my heart rate's going to go down and some other like biometric stuff will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that's awesome too. But again, it speaks to the fitness level of both you and individuals that can be presented a challenge like this. Of okay, we're taking your barbells away, we're taking all the equipment that you've become comfortable with, and now you really have to condition yourself to what is uncomfortable, unfamiliar, uncharted territory of like a lot of body weight stuff. I know it's like what a lot of people on we've been trying to program for them over the last 2 weeks with what stuff. So like military prep, assuming that most people have their uniform available to them at home, their plate carrier, a ruck, maybe a sandbag, and then like some very minor equipment like bands and maybe a couple free weights. But outside of that, like you got to make do with what you got.
Yeah, and that's like I think that's been a very unintended consequence. I would say from this pandemic is that from a programming perspective, it's definitely been more challenging and more I guess making me think and program a little more creatively to program to make it low or no equipment, still get the same stimuli that we usually program for. So it's been very an interesting perspective to me, and I think I'll actually take a lot of this kind of perspective from the quarantine into future programming with some of the other stuff, because it's like you can still be pretty effective, not having any.
For sure. I think what a lot of people are concerned about is like losing some of those upper level peaks that they were hitting on a strength cycle. And I think what I found is working well, because the weight set that I have here only goes up to like 315. It's like, pistols are still a great accessory, movement to really stress some of that balance that you're going to run into as you start loading the weight up, to isolate, just the one leg. And it would be way more, I think, if doing pistols for volume feels way heavier than doing like, squats at 225.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. I mean, like you can always just mix it up.
Yeah, it's a good point that you brought up about people being concerned about losing strength or mass. And that's one thing we talked about on the Q&A. I want to say like last week we talked about like how to maintain strength and mass during quarantine. But those that kind of missed that discussion, basically what I said is that, with hypertrophy, you have like 3 mechanisms of hypertrophy. You have like tension, you have muscle damage, and you have metabolic stress. Those are kind of the 3 mechanisms of hypertrophy. So using those same principles, like you can still maximize like tension, you can maximize muscle damage, and you can maximize metabolic stress through a variety of different methods. So like with tension, you can increase your tension in your workouts by, making it tempo, make it single-legged, making like an awkward movement. There are a lot of different ways they can do to still have the stimuli to maintain mass and strength. You might lose a little bit of strength at the top end, like, going from like a 405 back squat to like a 365 or 385, not like a huge drop, but you'll gain it back relatively quickly as long as you stay consistent and still keep working out and still stressing your body.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are all great points. I mean, at the end of the day, I think there are enough programs out there that have like something different that you could do every single day that will make muscles in your body that you didn't know you have hurt. I when we first went under quarantine, I started doing like trail runs because I could get like, some great elevation change in there. But then like a couple days after I did these runs, I would find my hips, my ankles, my knees were like very sore because I wasn't running on this like flat path, like interval course that I'd already set up, that it was like, there's way more balance involved. So like stuff like that is just, it's great. And if you want to learn like something new, like you're in quarantine, if you can't do handstand push-ups, like start practicing handstand push-ups. Like that's a great opportunity for you to go back to the gym with a new skill set, maybe more gymnastics focused than you had before. Because I mean, like you look at all the top CrossFitters, and I think we should talk about the Fittest documentary here. Like all the top CrossFitters, a lot of them are like gymnasts at heart. Like they are fantastic with body weight between all of the handstand walking, ring work. Like these individuals have really mastered movement. And so throwing on weight is just like, it's that cherry on top that gets them into the games versus the guy that, like you were talking about, he told you he could go to the CrossFit Games because he can clean, 315, but he can't walk on his hands 2 feet. Like, there's gaping holes in people's skill sets.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a great point you bring up about like learning new skills in quarantine. I started not just fitness related, but I started learning how to program. Started learning Python just as a new skill set for the future. So that's a great point they bring up about like using this time you have in quarantine to learn something new or to do something you've never done before, because what the fuck else are you gonna do? There's only so much Netflix you can watch a day. There's only so much there's only so many games you can play a day.
Have you heard about Joe Exotic?
Dude, don't get me started on Tiger King. I can't stand Tiger King. Christina and I watched the first 2 episodes and I'm just over it. I just can't get into it.
I can't believe it went on for, I think it's 9 episodes.
Yeah, it's like something ridiculous.
Every single episode, I'm like, this has to be the end. And then you're just like, holy shit, how much worse can it get for these big cat owners? Like, I think everyone can agree, though, that, like, she who shall not be named definitely killed her husband. Like, I think those tigers ate him.
It's fucking I just don't understand why people, like, the obsession with it. It's just like, this is just like the same thing as, like, keeping up with the Kardashians. Mine has just a different, like, population or different audience.
Oh, okay. No. I think there are 19 seasons of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I've watched a lot of them on Hulu in my downtime. Those people are talentless. Joe Exotic and like the individuals that are caring for these big cats, at least they have like a skill set. Like, granted, when they show videos of like big cats in the wild, their cats look very fat in their cages because they can't exercise or run. But I don't understand, to be honest, though, like what the big obsession is with big cats. I'll be the first to say I hate cats. I am not a fan of fucking cats, so I don't care that the cat just happens to be 600 pounds.
So I will say you're fucking wrong right now because you've never experienced it, being up close and personal with a big cat. So I will say from personal
I've been
experience,
up close to a pit bull. I'm good.
So
Pitbull.
some context for this. So like there is one, I guess, quote in like the first episode where like there is something intoxicating about the power of being in the midst of a big cat. I was like, that's fucking true. Because when I was 19, I through West Point, I went to China for a summer exchange program, and we went to a tiger park in China, and it was fucking sick. So this is like you could, I guess, animal lovers, don't listen to the rest of this because it's probably gonna bother you. But there's this tiger park in China. So like it's China, so there's like no fucking rules. You can do whatever the fuck you want with these animals. So essentially, like we were in this bus, and they just drive you around the enclosures, right? And then they had a portion where you could pay money, you could buy live animals to feed the tigers in the enclosures. So like all my classmates, yeah, we pulled all our money together, and ended up buying a goat to feed to these tigers. So we pay the whatever it is, pay the person, and then you see this like SUV roll out, and it's like armored for some reason. Like the tires are like armored, and then like has like all the windows are like barred, so tigers can't get into the windows. But basically, the tigers knew what was going on. Cause, they know like when the SUV rolls out that it's mealtime.
Yeah, it's like Pavlov's dogs.
Yeah, so like immediately when they see the SUV come out, the tigers, like 4 or 5 tigers, just start like creeping over. And then you see the back door open of the SUV, and this goat just gets kicked out. And you see the fucking tiger just running at it. One grabs it, and the bigger tiger runs up and just janks it from the smaller tiger, and then just goes into like the tall grass. And like actually, I have like video of this. The tiger actually like plays with the goat, like where like kind of lets it like run away a little bit, and then catches it and pulls it back in the grass. It's fucking wild. And then
that's like killer whales with seals, man.
Dude, it's fucking dope. And then after the trip through the bus enclosures, we like went on like a walking trip or like around the actual like pens, I guess, that they had. And then there you could still buy like chickens and like chunks of meat to like give to the tigers. So we were buying like live chickens, and like throwing them over the cages, and watching like tigers like fighting each other for the chickens, and like watching the tigers like defeather the chickens and eat the chickens. That was fucking sick. And then you could buy like these you could buy like a tong, or like just chunks of meat on like a tong, so you could like hold up the cage. So I have like a video of me holding up like a piece of meat to the cage, and the tiger's just sitting there like with its like claws like in the cage, like from me to you, like to my laptop, like inches away, and then just sitting there like licking the meat, trying to eat the meat through the cage. And I was like touching it. I was like, this is fucking wild. So long story short, like it is until you experience like being up close and personal with a tiger or like a big cat, you don't really appreciate it until you see it, until you experience it.
Yeah, but it goes back. I'm not unimpressed by how big these creatures are. I'm just not like turned on like these morons are that are like, I need to go spend $600 to pet a tiger. Like it's like the same thing that I'm not a huge fan of zoos to begin with. Like I think it's awful, how we capture these animals and take them out of their habitats. Not like their habitat's really, viable any longer with the way the world has evolved and grown. But like those things should be out in nature. Like your killer whale shouldn't be swimming around like a football field sized tank. Like that thing needs to be out in the wild.
No, I 100% agree. Like now that I'm older, because this was back when I was like 18, I went to China to like run this trip. So obviously like that's like a decade ago. My perspective has changed. I actually I don't go to the zoos anymore because it kind of depresses me seeing animals in zoos. But I was just saying, like, I just share that experience just to show just to illustrate how I can like supremely identify with what Joe Exotic says about how like it's kind of cool to have, or like I can see the allure of having like a big cat to like taking care of one because it is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's very cool how massive these things get and their athleticism, and when they do get to go on a hunt, whether or not it's like fake, just so that you can watch someone like what you got to experience in China, like that's cool. Like that's nature on nature. Like one of I think our favorite Instagram accounts is Nature is Metal.
Nature is Metal, yeah.
Which is just great. Like if you want to watch like. They had a video. And it's a sad video because I think the male lion got euthanized, but it was like this lion was eating some carcass of like a water buffalo or something, and another male tiger got too close, and that tiger went and broke that lion's back, and so like that lion was just basically crawling along on its front paws, and I think they euthanized it. I think it was in Kenya or something at a preserve. I was like, that's just power. That's raw. That is Matt Fraser going and hitting like a 380 clean at the CrossFit Games to ensure that he's going to be in first place on that final day. That's just raw power.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. I will be like straight up. Like I can easily see why people are very enamored by these tigers and big cats because, it is wild. Just imagine the power. Like they could, like I think there's very few things or like. There are very few circumstances where like us as human beings are exposed to something that could literally kill you with one motion. Like there's very few things that you can think about like animals or like living things that could kill you with one motion, and it's just like being up close and personal with something that can kill you like immediately. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I mean, I think there was that Joe Rogan like meme where. I don't even know if it was a meme. He might have said this in real life. I can't keep track of like what a meme and what's real Joe. But he's like, can you imagine if we taught like gorillas how to weightlift? Like,
oh yeah.
How massive they were. Like that's pretty good. Can you imagine that? Imagine if Harambe had been like deadlifting and squatting and snatching. I don't think like we'd have like a Rampage style type event going on our hands where we'd really have to have The Rock come save us.
That's like it's very interesting seeing like. Because, I think with modern society, like, we're so insulated from, like, wildlife that, you don't really appreciate the power or size of some of these things until you see them in person. You're like, holy shit.
Oh, dude, when I go running up here on the hill, like, that's one of the things that I'm, like, almost terrified of.
Mountain lion.
Mountain lion. Because, like, there are a lot of, like, switchbacks. There's a lot of very tall, like, scrub oak back there. A lot of dead foliage, so like I have to be listening more so than doing anything else because like I'm not going to be able to see this thing. And I'm just thinking like, and I don't think a mountain lion gets huge, but 75 to 150
like
pounds of mountain lion,
like your size.
like oh my god, I'd be fucked. I'm constantly looking around like what rock can I grab? Can I grab that rock? Can I grab that rock? And if I got the dogs with me, it's like which one of you is the slowest?
Yeah, like,
but I'll save you. But I just want to know because. Like I don't want my throat first gone after because then I'll be helped to nobody.
Yeah, that's wild. Like that's a great point. Like, man, it's like
it's scary. Nature's scary.
Nature's
like
really
get
scary.
out there. Like I feel badly for sharks, for instance. Like we're on a fucking tangent here, but I feel bad for sharks. Like 100 million sharks are killed every year, and it's like they get a couple surfers, they get a couple swimmers. Like Australia and New Zealand were like real famous for all because I think the Australian Prime Minister one time was killed by a great white. But it's like we kill millions upon millions of sharks, and we're so afraid of them when we go swimming in the ocean. It's like it's almost like an unfounded fear, I think, at this point. Yeah. But those things, sharks are fucking scary. Like that's the Apache of the water. Like
very interesting. I will say I do enjoy going to aquariums because I think aquariums are different from zoos because aquariums, you have marine, like fish, don't know the difference between swimming and like, well, actually, I don't fucking know if they know the difference, but in my mind, aquariums are okay because the fish are not smart enough to realize they're in an enclosure. So it's not really depressing for me to go to an aquarium, but it's depressing as shit for me to go to a zoo and see like a lion in a zoo just sitting there, not where it's in its intended habitat. So that makes me sad.
Oh, no. It's awful. I really hope that they do something about like as much as I dislike going back to Joe Exotic, like the big cat sanctuaries. Yo, chill. As much as I hate like the big cat sanctuaries I think like the big cat law should definitely be passed. to prevent individuals from having this kind of powerful animal just at their disposal, because it's just unfair to the animal.
Yeah.
At the same time, the sanctuary shouldn't profit from the big cats that they're saving either.
Not to get into Tiger King, but I think that Rogan says something about that too. Dogs. He says that I think there's like a statistic that there's like more tigers in Texas than there are in like in the world or some shit like that. It's like crazy to think about.
Yeah, no, I think there are. What do they say? There's only like 2,000 wild tigers, and there are alone like 6,000 in their cages. Dude, you can see my stash right now. It's great, isn't it?
That's a shadow.
That's just this natural. It's my natural musk. Yeah, I want to have like a whole persona, by the way, like the whole Jackson Maine from A Star Is Born. Like maybe I'll grow my hair out longer, and I don't know. I'm just gonna. When you get famous, people just want to call you by your full name. It's just Jackson.
Oh my god. But yeah, tigers are dope. Big tigers or big cats are pretty fucking sick. Zoos are bad. You shouldn't be allowed to own these wild animals on your private property.
No, I feel bad for. We're still on this animal thing. Why are we? We're still on it, but like Yellowstone. Like I feel bad for the animals up in Yellowstone because they're getting used to people feeding them. So like the wolf packs that are going through there are like slowly encroaching onto space that doesn't belong to the park, and they're getting killed. And the bear population and elk population. I mean, it's awful what we do to the environment.
So maybe the pandemic isn't coronavirus. Maybe the pandemic is humans.
I'm not. That's like a. Oh, it's so. It's like something you see on like an Etsy board, or some like Instagram post from some chick who's like, "I was gonna promote this tea today, but maybe humans are the cancer to the world."
I mean, if you think about it, like humans are a virus or an infection on planet Earth. If you think about it that way.
Okay, Ultron. Like,
I would
like
snap in a heartbeat if I had the power.
Oh, if I had the power, yeah, I'd snap. I'd snap twice, like just to really get the levels down. Here's a question now. I mean, because if you're still listening to the podcast, we're just going to go on tangents. When Tony Stark re-snapped his hands at the end of that movie, and this is so long ago, there were probably a lot of people that were in aircraft at the time of the snap. There were a lot of people that were in some precarious situations driving.
Okay, whatever.
How did they get snapped back? Are you telling me that these thousands of people that were on flights get snapped back and have to die again at 35,000 feet, free falling to their deaths? Or are they like their body was in motion at 80 miles an hour on a highway, and all of a sudden that's exactly where they get re-snapped, so they're getting like splattered effect? Like, that's something that the Avengers didn't solve a problem for. In fact, I think that was causing more harm than the harm of just reducing the total population by half.
I don't know about that. I mean, maybe like 5%, but 50% was 5%, whatever.
And what about all the animals? So we snapped like humans out of existence. Like, I think it was all living things got cut in half by
humans
Thanos.
Only. It's humans only.
I don't think it was not just humans, because it was like that on all the other planets. Like all the other planets had their populations cut in half. So I don't think it was just like sentient beings that were capable. No, I think it was like in general all like creatures were snapped in half. So then now you got to think like what happens to all the fish and wildlife that are out there. I don't think the writers did a very good job of closing that loophole for me.
It's fine, Sean. I think the Russo brothers are more than happy to deal with that criticism for not exploring that plot hole more, or explain that plot hole more.
I mean, we really didn't explain it that much, but I assure you bodies were dropping from the sky as a result of Tony Stark trying to bring these people back. Rather than just destroying the stones and killing Thanos, because they had the upper hand, they had him on Earth, we had to bring these people back. That's a decision I would have made real easy. I would have been like, destroy the stones, snap, goodbye. Like, look how great the Earth is now. Here's another statistic. We talk about Corona. People are like, I want you to imagine like a close friend or family member. You have to name them. They're going to get coronavirus and die. When like, the whole statistic is like 1 to 2%. It's like, I don't think I know 100 people where I could be like, I have to pick one or two.
How about this? It's not. I don't think that's like the most. Well, that's I think what people kind of struggle with to understand the magnitude of the situation. But it's like for those greater than 80, I believe it's like a 20% mortality rate. So if you have grandparents, that's one of your grandparents dying. If you think about it that way.
That's a better way to phrase it instead of just pick someone. I mean, if we're playing the pick somebody game, like there's a whole bunch of bad people that I'll just like start naming.
Yeah. So that's like the thing to think about. It's just like it's like 20% mortal in like elderly people greater than 80. So if you think about like grandparents, you have 4 grandparents. One of your grandparents, if they catch it, it's probably gonna die.
I feel like pretty badly for like the senior population we have in this country. Like you think of, I don't know if it's like in our lifetime we're going to have as many ups and downs as they did, but if you were of the World War II generation, the greatest generation, you had to live through the Great Depression. You had to live through like a very trying time through the New Deal to like grow into the society what we were in, to then just do every decade like a major war between World War II, Korea. You get to the 60s and you're like, oh, thank God, like we have a time to like relax. And then your kids turn out to be like baby boomer hippies that want like, all these handouts that you yourself never got to experience because you had to earn it the hard way. And then you're like, whatever. Then you have Vietnam and then you're like, shit, like it's finally going to get better. And then you have like a nice period between like maybe the, 80s to mid 2010s. And all of a sudden 2020, you're like, oh my God, like, it's not been too bad. And then they're like, LOL, here's coronavirus, as if like your lifetime of, now these individuals are anywhere from 90 to 100 years old wasn't like bad enough at the beginning. Like we're going to fucking bookend it for them with some other awful scenario. Like, God, I hope my life doesn't have like the bookends like that.
For sure. Yeah. But then I guess even if it does have the bookends, would you even know it was bookend?
Yeah, probably. I'm probably like, man, I'm really old. Like it's probably going to come, but I really hope it's not this coronavirus.
Yeah. Yeah, I just empathize. But whatever, we should, if you're young and healthy like us, you should do the right thing and not, and just do the right thing and stay home and quarantine and not be like these people that have quarantine parties.
Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed by New York City right now. Like I am a New York City resident, so if you can't pick it up from my accent or my love of pizza, like you're just being wrong and stereotypical. This is what a New Yorker looks like. Okay, we're all different. Those idiots in that city, when the U.S. Navy ship showed up, like the
Comfort,
U.S. Navy Comfort or whatever, like hundreds of people were lining the river taking photos of this thing like a bunch of morons. Like, did you not just see what happened in Virginia? Like June 10th, that's when people can go back to maybe living a normal life. Like New York is about to put itself on some massive, very strict shelter-in-place quarantine type restrictions to people's movements. I have to move back into the city at some point this summer. I don't want to be barred from doing that because your dumbass wanted to take a photo of a ship.
Yeah, I think I think this is a great kind of example of Western or maybe American ideals contrasting with so like individual liberties contrasting compared with the greater good. In Western American culture, we're always like fucking, told from birth that, you have these rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Whereas in the rest of the world, like the vast majority, like over 50% of the world, like if you look at China and like Korea or even Germany, like these countries with like with the histories of like authoritarian, totalitarian style, governments, the ones that have a understanding or an appreciation of the greater good triumphing over, or like the greater good takes precedence over your individual liberties. That's a great, I think, case study in contrasting how, like, look at South Korea. Like South Korea, has that like minimal cases because once they found out that coronavirus was coming, they just locked everything down. Like people stayed home because that was the right thing to do because people understood. Yeah. It might be shitty for me, to stay home for a month. Like I can't see my friends. Like, oh, it's kind of shitty. but the greater good of the country and the greater good of the entire population takes precedence over my situation. So that's like a whole like commentary on Western and civil liberties versus, or not civil but individual like rights versus the greater good. And I think being like from my perspective, like I can see the advantages and disadvantages of both systems. So I think it just kind of Americans inherently are inherently selfish and care about themselves just because that's just a system that Americans are born into. Based on
Well, I think it comes
politics
down
and
to
government.
like the history of our interpretation of the Constitution, our primary law source, compared to other countries and what they use for their doctrines. Like in Europe, for instance, like hate speech is very restricted and it's punishable. Here in the United States, like unless there's some sort of imminence to that speech or rhetoric that is going to like incite violence immediately, like you can get away with saying almost anything. It's why if a group of Nazis wants to walk down the street during doing a rally, like you have that freedom. And it's like it's grown through like this idea of substantive due process and what does speech just inherently mean. And so for a nation that we constantly have a lot of these privileges available to us on a daily basis, it's like if you're telling me I can't do something, it's just like it's inherently not within our
Psyche.
persons to like acknowledge that and go like no, like I can do whatever I want. And it's like, okay, well, like at some point I think there has to be a check and the government has to be able to step in. And I just hope there's not like too many people that are really like grossly affected by this and the economy can bounce back. But I think selfish people are really ruining this whole thing. It's like the guy from the Jazz, like going and touching all the microphones, making light of coronavirus, and then he tested positive for it. Like that dude's an asshole.
Yeah, 100%.
Like,
but that's like
that.
But that's like the point that I think we're both saying the same thing. It's just like you can see it's kind of interesting, like how the cultural zeitgeist of America precludes America from having a very effective response to this, because we have this very not idealistic, but like this culture of independence and like your rights as an individual, and we don't really probably not until like since World War II that we had to experience like taking into account the greater good versus the individual. So maybe this would be good to like illustrate that in American culture, or like after 9/11, for example. Like after 9/11, people are like, we're gonna. Actually, I don't even know if that's a good example, because I don't know how many people like sacrificed in their individual lives to further the country. Never mind. 9/11 is not a good example.
I mean, there was like some more, like there was a stronger nationalism flair, but I think that's what it needs to. There needs to be some level of a national movement that like unifies people, and not the half-hearted type of nationalism. Like we're gonna really combat global warming. Like a true like people need to hold each other accountable and like prevent stupidity from happening, because it's like it's negatively impacting like the people that didn't deserve it.
And that's like that's the worst part too, is like the people that are most risk for dying from something like this is that they're not the ones that are walking around. It's people like us, the healthy. Was it like the 50% of COVID cases in New York City are in the 18 to 40 age group, because it's like because they don't take it seriously and are fucking around.
And so like on a political like point here, like I think a lot of that comes down to like leadership. And I know a lot of journalists are calling President Trump out on the White House lawn for the rhetoric that he used to describe COVID-19 all the way through February, even beginning of March, and really just discounting it. And his rationale for that is he wanted to keep the country positive and didn't want to create like a negative atmosphere. But the problem with that is because you don't instill any fear in people, they don't think it's an issue. And so now we got to the point where people are like, well, why would this person go to spring break? Or why would this person go to the beach? It's like, well, because for the majority of Americans that are, of a, certain, political ideology, like their leader has been saying like this is not a big deal, and so it's just like there has to be some accountability at all levels for making the situation what it is. It's like, I'm sure the leader in South Korea, as was the president of China, when he was like, no, this is a fucking problem. Like, we're gonna make this problem go away. It wasn't like let's sugarcoat it. It's like, no, like this is what we're doing, and I don't think we have that right now.
Yeah, I would say like I can see both sides of the argument in terms of like inciting a panic versus educating the public, and I think there's a very fine line that you can tread, where you're informing the public without causing a panic. But the whole like minimizing the situation, I think, probably set us back months on that curve, like setting up for failure versus success.
I mean, 100%, especially when you have like the talking heads at Fox News, like Ingram and Hannity and Tucker Carlson using words like hoax to describe coronavirus back in February. Like, that's the kind of stupidity that like should not be tolerated. Like, there's one degree of people saying like this is the next Spanish influenza, it's going to kill 100 million people, versus okay, like this is a serious, like life-threatening illness that we should really take accountability in our actions and our words for.
Yeah.
Like, there needs to be, I think the media is doing like, again, the bookend version of it, but there has to be somewhere in the middle that they overlap and agree on.
No, I think that's a valid point, but that's like goes back to our discussion on the media like a couple weeks ago too, about how sensational headlines are what sells and gets clicks. So like there's no business incentive for saying the truth and not sensationalizing or coming to this crazy conclusion in order to get views or clicks.
Yeah. Well, do we know what our charity for this month is going to be coming up in April?
I thought we were going to do like a food bank. So I imagine like New York City, that food bank that we donated to last month for New York City will be another worthy charity for next month.
Yeah, I think that would be a good one. I think someone recommended getting something going for some hospital staff that are facing hard times because they're essentially quarantined like 24/7 at the hospitals dealing with this, and they have to take care of their families, and they're separated from them, and like childcare costs and stuff like that. So we should look into something that helps out either the people that are impacted by it or the people that are trying to reduce the spread of it.
Yeah. So I think we'll discuss a little bit more offline, and then we can come up with a charity that will start next month.
Yeah.
April 1st, tomorrow.
April 1st.
We didn't talk about book club either. We still have to talk about book club still.
I haven't read yet.
Let's we'll table that discussion until later then. Whoops.
Yeah, and hopefully the next time we see each other, there will be a GB sitting next to me that can talk about his experiences going through SFAS and
that would be nice.
Q course, and
he just said
how much.
Yeah, he did just text me when we started. And he said he just got back from Denver. Apparently, he has a girlfriend.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's come over. We've lifted a couple times in the garage. I've seen the like joint dog.
So we will, for those that don't know what the fuck we're talking about, one of our good RASP 2 buddies and my 375 Ranger buddy is a Green Beret at Carson. Is that third group? Third group, right? 10th group. I knew that.
Not the 75th. Why do we care?
Yeah, but he's a Green Beret 10th group, and then we're going to try and get him on the podcast so that we can finally answer some of your questions about SFAS, SFQC, and all the Green Beret life, because obviously neither of us are Green Berets, so we can't really tell you what that life is like. So I guess
you could probably tell that just by how good looking we are anyway.
Yeah. Or just the fact that, But yeah, I think that's a good point. We should probably like bring it up on the gram and have people like come up with some questions that they want answered or anything they're interested in talking about, since our perspective might be different from other people's perspectives or questions they want answered.
No, absolutely. It's a good point.
But I guess I think we should wrap it for today. I think that's a good summary. So we kind of had a couple of tangents about Tiger King, and definitely had a little bit of tangent there about animals, but I think a pretty good discussion at the overall.
Yeah. Well, Bobby, I will hit you up in the mañana.
Okay. Any closing comments before we kick it off?
No, get out there and go run. You're not restricted from running yet.
Yeah. and continue working out. Both our programs are tailored for quarantine fitness, so try and get your weights in, get your kettlebells, dumbbells, get stocked up a little bit on some basic supplies, so that in the future you can always have options to working out at home. I think that's it. Anything else, John?
No. I'm gonna sign off now.
Yeah, I'll say I will later once I figure out how much money we raised this month to the charity for brain cancer awareness or brain cancer research. I'll post something about how much money we raised and then document that as well. So just keep eyes out for that. How much money you guys raised for brain cancer research?
Oh, and by the way, then on a sign-off note, talking about Tiger King, the missing person case for Carol Baskin's husband has been reopened.
It's such a cold case. That's fucking like 20 years ago.
It's open. It's back
Doesn't
open.
mean
So
anything.
think on that before the next podcast. Before the next podcast, that's what you got to think on.
Fucking Tiger King. All right, we'll see you guys later.
Cronus Fit out. Be somebody.
Later.